Poquito, Poquito, Poquito podcast. Poquito, Poquito, Poquito podcast. Poquito, Poquito,
Are you
Poquito.
originally from Vegas, or are you just sitting out there?
No, so I was telling Ricky and Ryan downstairs that I'm from like the Norwalk area is where I say I'm from.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
didn't know you were from out here.
Yeah, I grew up out here for like the first 15 years of my life, and then
Okay.
I moved out to Arizona, graduated high school, got my associates out there, and now I'm in Henderson getting my bachelor's.
Hell yeah. Damn, we've been meeting so many people that are just like from SGV, like just coincidentally, like Emily and like fucking Martin Rizzo. Crazy.
Like the South area, yeah. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah.
At least, have you ever had to go get your birth certificate?
No, that's the one thing that my mom was really good about was like our birth certificates and our social security cards. So I have a lot of siblings. So when I was like 14, she was like, "This is yours now, and you keep this."
14? Wow, she actually relinquished it? I was 30 before I got mine.
No, I have a bunch of like younger siblings.
That's so funny. Yeah, dude, my mom got so mad that my dad had my birth certificate.
Yeah.
She was like, I need to have it. And then I went to go get my birth certificate again because I lost it, of course. And then she was like, "Get me a copy."
I was gonna say that like maybe it's because like moms have more protectiveness over the boys, but then you lost it immediately. So I think it's justified that you guys can't have it.
I had to ask
Fair.
for mine when I was like 16 because I was I was trying to apply for a work program, and they're running through the hiring process. And the ironic thing was, she gave me the originals, resisted the entire time, but then like a week later, her car got stolen. And that's where she was keeping the other
In the
one.
car?
So she lost the copies.
No, my mom had like a nice like pink folder with all these like separations because for a long time it was just me and my little brother, and then she had like 14 million more kids in her 30s. No, there's only 3 more.
13 million.
Throw your mom under the
Feels
bus.
like a lot. Thank you.
That's a funny thing for a mom to say. Anyway.
So like I was like, I've always been really good in school. I've always been doing like a lot of stuff in school, and I needed that like information a lot. And so she was like, "I'm fucking tired of this. Take it." And then they divorced, and it was good that I had it. So because I didn't see her for a while.
Hell yeah. So, are you the oldest?
I am. I'm the oldest of like 8, including step siblings.
Damn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm only 24, so
I'm the
they're
opposite.
really small.
I'm
Yeah,
the number 8 out of 10.
Yes, I recall every time you talk
yeah,
about
yeah.
this
There you go.
on the podcast, I'm
I've
like,
said it
that's
enough.
yeah.
It's so
That's
weird
scary.
to be an adult
Yeah.
of the youngest adult. Like, that means you have like older, like very old siblings.
Yeah,
That's gonna be
my
me.
oldest sibling is like, yeah, that's going to be you. You're going to be the 50-year-old with 30-year-old.
No, literally.
Yeah.
No, literally. Like almost quite literally. My
Yeah.
youngest sibling is 18 years younger than me.
Oh,
Yeah,
dang.
that's kind of the gap in my family too, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I mean, there's a
Kinda weird.
generational
It is
divide.
weird.
It's like it almost feels like 2 generations sometimes, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Does that feel weird for you? Like,
Like a lot, like all the time.
like a lot.
I'm woman presenting, so people are always like, "When are you gonna have kids? When are you gonna get married?" Blah blah blah. Because I'm woman presenting. I don't need to have kids. I raised 3 boys.
Yeah.
I don't need any more. Thank you.
the problem of being an eldest Latina sister.
Dude, it's so bad. I literally had to move states to not do that.
Fair. I know. I can only imagine how you feel. Like, I had 2 younger siblings. I didn't take care of them a lot, but then as I got older, I had lots of nieces and nephews.
Yeah.
I'd be like, taking them to school
Uncle
in the
Ricky,
morning,
yeah.
picking them up from school after school, Uncle Ricky, and I would just bring them home, be like, "Here, eat some bread." I was like bad at it.
Some bread.
Here's some bread. Put food on it.
I will say one time my mom left me alone with my younger brother. I think I was like 12, so he was like 8, and he was like, "I'm hungry," and I was like, "Dude, make a fucking cup of noodle. Like, what do you want me to do about it?" And he goes and he puts the cup of noodle in the microwave without any fucking water.
Classic.
And He was 8. I had helped him with his homework so much. I knew he knew how to read. I was like, why didn't you read the instructions? He's like, there's instructions? I had to get a new one to show him because the one that he destroyed was like all melted and shit.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, okay, so you actually can't use the microwave either.
That's wild.
Our youngest brother Diego did that he was like 6. Probably everything happened when he was 6. Inside joke. He was like 5 or 6, and we told him to make a cup of noodles, and he did the same thing. And we were like, "Why would you do that?" And he started crying, like sobbing. Yeah. He was like, "I was gonna put the water in after."
I love kid brain. I love kid brain so much. I don't think my brother even knew when he was gonna put the water in.
It's so funny because we all teased him for it after, we all teased him at that moment, but then like a week later he got to tease Dominic because Dominic tried to...
Whatever he's going to say, it's a lie.
He tried to hard boil eggs in the microwave and he did not know you're not supposed to do that. And he bit into one and it exploded in his face.
Yeah, I still have like a scar tissue on my tip of my lip.
You literally got
That's
egg
crazy.
shrapnel in you? That's impressive.
I just think if you guys had a sister, some of that stuff wouldn't have happened.
It was an explosion.
My mom... Shut up, Brian. My mom wanted girls.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'll tell you what. I had 5 sisters. Stuff like that happened a lot less in our family. You know?
There is a thing about just having a woman in your life is like, yeah,
You just stop doing stupid shit.
Yeah.
Or at least they stop it for you, you know?
Yeah, you just think things through a little bit more.
Yeah.
We usually get to this stuff at the end, but it's kind of we're in it. It's like, so what is your relationship with like being Latina? Like, I'm interested in...
That's interesting. I talked about it a little bit with Ryan downstairs because, I grew up out here, but I moved to somewhere where there was like only white people. Mm-hmm. I knew all of the other Latino students at my high school by name, and I could count all of us on one hand.
Oh, dang.
I could even throw in the black students and it would still be one hand.
Wow.
Jesus.
So majority white high school is like where I graduated from. So it was like, it was really weird. And then I went to college, to get my associates in an area where it was all white Mormon people specifically. That was really interesting, and it definitely like made me not rethink my identity, but just like be grateful for it a little bit. But there was also a huge sense of like loss almost. Like this is what I'm used to. I'm used to seeing other Latinos everywhere all the time, constantly. And then I was in an area where I was like the only one for maybe miles. And it was like really frustrating and hard sometimes. But now I graduated college in a tiny town called Safford, Arizona that none of you have ever heard of, I bet.
Nope.
Yeah, and this is the only time you'll ever hear of it. And so like I was there for like 3 years all through COVID, basically like 2019 through 2022 is when I finally moved. Mm-hmm. And I moved because I was like, I need to get the fuck away from white people. I need to get back to the culture, bro. So the school that I go to specifically is a Hispanic serving institution. I chose it specifically because it was that, and I wanted to be near people who were like me, looked like me, talked like me. And I am. All of my mentors at my college are Latinas. They are all doctorate holders who are also Latinas. Oh, wow. So they're like 3% of a population of PhDs.
Is that like a HBCU? Like
it's similar, yes. So my school is specifically an HSI and an AAPI serving institution. So that's the majority of students who attend my campus.
Is it also eldest daughters only?
that might be true.
There's a thing about, Latinas in education. Like it is a real, like, I forgot what year it was. It was like 2016 where it was like the Latinas were the highest represent.
Yeah, we're outpacing everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In enrollment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I look at my sisters, yeah.
Yeah, we outpace everybody else in undergraduate enrollment in terms of like increasing. Like we're still increasing Latinas in enrollment. And, it might be because there's like 8 kids in each family, so there's a good chance for multiple girls.
It's crazy. I found out that I think the current highest IQ is held by a little girl who's Latina.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
like
fucking
13
smart,
now.
dog.
Oh,
Was
yeah.
that girl in Mexico?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, she just graduated college, I think.
Yeah.
And she's like 13.
How do you feel about representation in? Well, there is a distinction, but how do you feel about representation of like Latinos, Latinas in academia? And like now, there's just a study article came out that said like Latinos represent less than 5% of like corporate executives in the American industry.
Yeah. So I think that I'm a little spoiled because I go to a school where I'm able to see that representation every day. Like I work in the psych department. I work very closely with these Latinas that I really look up to. Shout out Dr. Nauman and Dr. Marshall. You guys are my rocks. But like it's very jarring when I go off my campus and like I'm at UC Irvine right now for a undergraduate research program, and the proportion of Latinas is still like really high, like really good. But I'm definitely seeing like more of a mixture because UC Irvine is just such a big campus. It's so diverse. It's very beautiful. So it's just like really, I feel like we're there, but there's just not a lot of people paying attention to us almost. And we're just kind of paying attention to each other and uplifting each other as much as we can, especially at conferences. Like I went to a conference in February in San Diego to present research work. This Society for Personality and Social Psychology conference, SPSP for short. And they had a Latino mixer. So all of the Latina researchers and students who were there got together in one room, and we were just, in one room. But my mentors like made a comment. They were like, there are so many more of us in this room now than there were like 10 years ago when I was a student attending this conference for the first time. So like on one hand, it's like, yes, there's still I think a significant lack of us in academia. On the other, there is a big increase, and I think we're only going to overwhelm numbers more and more. And I think that's a good thing because I think we all have really great ideas.
Not that I'm fishing for drama, but do you think that I just feel like because the demographic is historically underrepresented, is there a difference in respect? Like, do you think there's a difference in respect? Because I feel like in general, like academics tend to have like, if you're in it, then you're here for a reason and there's a mutual understanding of each other.
Yeah.
But if there's like a new demographic that's like coming up more, did you feel like they get treated any differently, or is there any difference in that?
So there definitely have been instances of disrespect that I've like noted. Like nobody really, I get disrespected all the time because I'm an undergrad. Like nobody really pays attention to me. But like I've seen my mentors have to deal with some of that. In Nevada, especially, there's like, so if you don't know how the higher education system works, there's basically like 2 groups at the top. In Nevada, it's the chancellor of the Nevada higher education system, and then the board of regents. And the chancellor is like a real deal job that like you apply for, but the board of regents are elected positions. And so if they're elected, they can really just be any dickwad off the street. And that makes for a lot of issues. Like there have been remarks recently, I can't remember the regent's name at the moment, but like he at a meeting, like at a board meeting that was like public, like students were there, faculty were there, other admin like were there, was talking about like, oh, like I know we have all these programs for our students of color, but what about white students? My mentor and the chair of my department, this meeting happened at our institution, so she felt especially angry with that because she like works so closely with us and knows exactly the barriers that we deal with off of our campus, because our campus is a very wonderful, beautiful, safe space for us, and we're like allowed to like really reach for the stars in terms of academia. But she knows off campus we have a lot of barriers that we face, and so that remark was not taken well by the faculty, and I've been told, I have no idea if this is true or not. I've been told that she went up to the microphone and was like, how dare you come onto my house and talk about my students like that? Just totally went off. So definitely some lack of respect for people of color in academia in general. And I know that the chair of my department faces a lot more of that because she is, the chair and she has to go talk to the president and stuff. But I will say the president of my campus is a black woman. So there's very little, people don't often get away with stuff like that on our campus.
Right.
Which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, that's awesome. What can you remind me? What are you studying?
I am a psych major. My specialization is in developmental psychology, and I have a sociology minor.
Okay.
We were talking a little bit earlier before the podcast about how you were also pushed into looking into business.
Oh yeah.
And that how you said that kind of left a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, it's just like you work towards one thing for so long, and it's like that's all I can see myself doing. But my mentor meant no harm by it. She's only looking out for me, and I totally understand that. And when I looked into business schools further, a lot of the business faculty, they're all social psychologists. Every last one of them, unless they're in economics.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been looking more into this stuff too, but I wonder, do you think that's like a trend amongst Latinos in general, or is this like a younger person thing to like have a worry or distrust of going into business yourself?
Well, I think that's more individual to me.
Yeah.
I don't think
yeah.
I don't think that would necessarily be applicable to like other people in my situation, but it left a bad taste in my mouth just because I have an extreme disdain and distrust of capitalism and business and economics and money as a concept.
It also feels a little bit like, well, you need something to fall back on. Like that kind of sentiment. Because us going into a creative field and like being performers and comedians, it's like, we've been told a lot, like, oh, you should still make sure you
she was concerned about the willingness of faculty in psych programs to take on my research project as a mentee. So that was like where her concern was lying, and I definitely understand that. So I really want to research just media and interactions with media and people. Specifically, I'm very interested in the interactions of a live streamer, a video game live streamer, and their audience, and how that interaction, if there's any like gender disparities or bias that exists in that interaction, and if that affects their success in the industry and their income flow. So that's why she was like, maybe like because you have this angle on it, maybe business school would be better suited for you.
That's really interesting, though. It's one of those things too, because it feels like it's very new, but it's also like that stuff like that. That's to me hearing that like that's exciting, and I'm like, I'm 32. I'm not that much older, but I am starting to notice like a difference in culture, different like in how people consume media. Yeah, and like there's all like Twitch streamer, like live streamers are huge. Yeah, and it's kind of like this thing it's like under the radar.
Thank you. No, yeah, I feel like so I was thinking about this the other day because like I think that there are a lot of entry points into this topic for me. And I think that whatever entry point I take is really going to be guided by whatever faculty mentor I get in graduate school. Because it feels like there's just this like giant, almost like a geode of like there's something in here that I can research and unlock that nobody else has taken a look at yet, and I just need somebody to take me seriously.
Yeah, it's like I get that. Were you gonna say something?
Your face.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting because that's something that not that specifically, but that sort of general area of conversation is something that I discussed a lot because in recent years, since TikTok sort of blew up, there's a lot of conversations about how the algorithm might have bias. Yes. And there's like, people getting what's called shadow banned. And you don't hear a lot about it lately, but it was a huge thing, especially during COVID when everyone was on TikTok, of like creators of color suddenly getting less to no views. Sometimes it'd be triggered by like a topic preference, but sometimes it was just like out of nowhere when they started to reach their peak exposure. And it's something that I think about a lot. Not just that, but also like the weird sort of like dissociation people have when they're online. Mm-hmm. Like you, on one hand, you have people that just remember the internet as like a new tool that no one knew how to use yet, and then the other hand, the younger generation, it's like part of their daily interaction. But there's still that level of like, when they're arguing online, they're not arguing with another person, they're arguing with their phone.
Yeah. There's like, I was telling Ricky downstairs that there is definitely a difference in how a live streamer as an entertainer interacts with their audience versus a traditional entertainer, or even you guys. Like, you guys are much more involved with your audience. I mean, I'm here. But you're much more involved with your audience, but there's still a huge level of like disconnect between, there's like a, you know, a huge space between you guys. As opposed to a live streamer who is interacting very individually with their audience constantly in chat. And there's just, so like, there's definitely a dehumanization happening, especially for non-male streamers or non-male presenting streamers, I feel like. And speaking on the algorithm and the shadow banning thing, I know that if you have your Twitch chat set to like followers only, which is usually a way to like block trolls, Twitch does not promote your feed as much on the main page.
Right.
It does not promote your stream as much. Which is interesting because the people who most often use that are people who exist like outside of the gender binary. So they're trying to prevent like trolls and transphobia in their comment section and stuff. It's very interesting. And I just don't think that there's a lot of people looking into it. And I would love to be one of the people.
It does sound very like ahead of the curve, like what you're talking about.
I try to be.
It does. I mean, I remember, you know, being in my early 20s, and like it's the same thing as people being like, back then it was YouTube, like being a YouTube star, and like YouTubers started getting managers and agents and started making millions of dollars. But like I was working in film, and people were like, who are these people? Like not taking YouTubers seriously because they were like, they're not movie stars, they're not TV stars, you know, they're not real famous.
Yeah.
You know, so, and then now it's like, it's just grown into like being social media stars and Twitch live streamers and all that stuff.
They're even like becoming media moguls now.
Yeah.
Like there's every rank and file, YouTube, Twitch, all these things.
And also there's just it's so funny because it is just the way the culture is shifting that it's odd to see older people not take that seriously, because people of all ages are on social media constantly.
Yeah, and social media is kind of the only facet of the internet that most social psychologists look into. Like they're really interested in people's like usage time and who they follow, why. There's a lot of like body dysmorphia and eating disorder like related studies being done because of social media, Instagram specifically. But it's, you know, it's just not my niche. I don't really care how people are interacting in Instagram comments. I want to know what's happening in these live chats, live, real time human interaction.
So like more towards like parasocial issues.
Yeah.
There's so much. Live streams are so interesting to me. Like the idea. I have like, I'm starting to meet people that are younger now, and like, we'll be chilling. One of my friends would like put on a video, like we're just both hanging out, and like she put on a video and it's just people reacting to stuff, and I'm like, what? Why? This is I mean, it's so funny because I sound like when people are like, why would anybody watch anyone play video games? Like, why are people watching Call of Duty?
There's definitely like something interesting. I think that though, like watching a reaction video, if it's your first time also seeing that video, there's some sense of like community camaraderie between you and the streamer. Right. Watching this for the first time, seeing what their reaction is, almost like watching it with a friend. That's what it kind of gives me.
Kind of like mukbang.
Yeah.
It's interesting because what I feel like I've learned, like for a while I was like just play video games a lot. I would for like years ago, all I did was stand up in video games and didn't really have a life. But I did stand up, so I still
Relatable.
interacted. But I remember for the amount of time I was on Twitch, I remember realizing, at least from my point of view, like, oh, all this content, and I applied it to everything. All this content is an excuse for community.
Yeah.
But Twitch, these streamers actually, now hearing you talk and like processing this more, the whole goal is to create community.
Yes, absolutely.
Whereas like YouTubers, podcasters, and all these other people that had forums or whatever, community was like in tandem with what their content was.
Yeah.
But it's almost like Twitch streamers, community is the content.
Because community is how they make money.
Yes.
That's like, capitalism, root of all evil. That's what it is. But
It almost seems. I'm sorry. I was trying to think of this word that comes to mind when I hear people talk about like parasocial relationships specifically with the life. It almost seems. I think the term symbiotic. Like they feed into each other, and that because of that they become dependent on each other, and then it just continues to go that way until something like breaks.
yeah.
Well, I definitely felt that way being on TikTok from like 2020 and then starting ECMO and then, having to go live. Like literally you had to go live in order to get your content pushed.
Yeah.
So we were posting clips 2-3 times a week. Well, and so I was going live for like 1 to 2 hours.
I was in those.
Yeah, I remember. yeah, you were in there. But like, and then sometimes it would just be like, there would be a moment where I'm just like,
There's nobody there. Yeah.
there's no one there. Well, not only is there no one there, but it's just like, listen, there's a reason why they stopped doing this after a certain amount of time, but there's a reason why you had to go live for a certain amount of time, and you would know that they were pushing your video because you'd be going live and then all of a sudden you'd have 20, 40 people in and you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like I can get off in a little while. Like, I mean, sometimes it was cool to go live. Sometimes it's cool to hang out. I'm just not that. There are some people that are very good at social media and live streaming and like that symbiotic relationship. And it's like, for me, it's part of the game. And that's kind of what you're talking about is like, you become dependent on these interactions. And like, so it's a very interesting, the more we get into it, I'm like, I'm having flashbacks and I'm like, no, this is cool. This is exciting stuff. And I think it's something that should be studied and should be talked about because like and then the other thing is how the algorithm shifts. Like people are constantly, social media people are constantly studying the algorithm and constantly seeing what's trending. Not only what content is trending, but there's very specific things that content creators look for of like what behavior is trending, what hashtags, what comments, what like. There are so many things that go into it that it's so funny because sometimes I'll see stuff or I'll talk about it in a way where I'm like, why doesn't everybody know this? Like, why doesn't everybody know what's going on?
It's hard. It's hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah. Or like I'll post something and it's like it's not doing well, and then I'll see somebody only like the video, and then I'm like, I need you to comment. I need you to favorite. I need you to repost.
I need you to subscribe.
It's so frustrating because like you're saying it like. You become dependent on other people doing these things, and at least on my side of things, like it's I'm not built for that. I want to keep doing this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like I have a love-hate thing because I like the community. I love people in our Discord, and I told you before when we were messaging on Discord, like you've been really great, like being part of the community. I love the community that we have as a podcast and like that we've grown, and I love participating in it. But just like the work aspect of it and the kind of like the artificialness of it.
Yeah, because you're still an entertainer. You're still a performer.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is like, that's the thing is that being a friend is the entertainment.
Yeah.
That's where I'm like, not that I don't like anybody, but I'm just like,
it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you connect to it in this way, but it's something I talk about a lot recently when I go live. Is so. I used to use the term spoons like a lot of other types of people.
No, I know.
Now I kind of use social battery. It's hard to find.
She's heard the podcast.
It's hard to find a term that people can understand because it's not like exhaustion. It's more just a capacity to. For me, like autistic burnout, especially social burnout, is specifically like my brain's run out of its capacity to actively care about the people around me.
Like bandwidth?
Yeah, like not that I don't care, but right now I only have the energy to focus on my immediate needs.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I have to isolate myself. Like it's something that I've struggled with not only as a content creator, but as a comedian. Like I tell people all the time, you know, if you see me come off stage after a show, don't be offended if I don't talk to you. It's literally, and actively, even though I'm the only one talking, I'm actively engaging socially, and I'm putting energy into the character that I'm portraying on stage, and that's depleting my entire capacity for social interaction.
I relate to that a lot when I go present at conferences and stuff. I have to stand there. I do poster presentations, so I have to stand there for like an hour and just talk to whoever comes up. And by the end of that hour, I'm like, cool, see you guys. Workshops tomorrow. I don't care what else is going on today. I have to go lie down.
Yeah, it gets crazy. And I feel like, you know, it might not just be an autism thing because I feel like a lot of comedians do this where, like, if I'm towards the middle or beginning of the show, then I have some time to recuperate. I get to enjoy the rest of the show, and that kind of helps me rebuild that battery, you know. Laughing creates dopamine, and that helps me kind of reset.
Right.
But if I'm towards the end of the show, especially if I'm the headliner, I just want to go home.
Yeah.
Like I'm done for the day. And it's the end of the show, and that's when literally you have to face that active scenario, and I don't have energy for it. Like it's always awkward because now people expect you to be social because now that's their moment to meet you, and it's like no,
not right now, please.
Yeah, you just go hide in the green room, which is just a mop and a sink, and you're just like standing there,
just staring at a mop like,
this is really nice right now.
Literally, that happens.
It's so funny.
Sorry, that's the last thing to say.
Go ahead.
Literally, I'll like disassociate at the end, and people walk up to me and they're like, "Hey, you good?" Just like, "Yeah, I'm fine."
Stop talking to me. I'll be better when you stop talking to me.
It's just like it's my brain's turned off, so it's like someone approaches me, it turns on. I'm like, "Oh, I engage you." Engagement's over. Back to what I was doing, and I go back to staring at the dripping water. Yeah, exactly.
You've been acknowledged. Just like robot-y. Sorry.
So no, it's fine. I have to think ahead. So this is all interesting to me because you're so deep into psychology.
Yes, it's my life.
But also, how does that relate to? So the reason why we had reached out and like we're having you come out, we were like planning this for months,
for forever.
I know. Is like to have you. You have a podcast called Astrophic.
Yes.
Can you explain the podcast?
Yeah. So Astrophic is a podcast where we apply astrology to fictional characters to find out why they're like that. That's kind of just like my tagline. Basically, I make up birth charts for characters and then discuss the birth chart as applicable as it is to the characters. Some characters have birthdays, and when they do, I'll use those birthdays and make their birth chart based off of that. But most characters don't, because creators don't know shit about astrology, which is fine. That's why my podcast exists. But really, it came about I was just always watching things with my friends and being like, they're a Gemini. That's a Capricorn right there. Then my friends just kind of got like a little bit annoyed with how often I would talk about it, because I couldn't watch anything without like trying to like not even trying to see the astrology, but like seeing it like happening on the screen. And so I just eventually made a podcast, and my friends were like, "Yes, we would listen to this because I get to choose when I hear this, and it's not when we're sitting there watching this show."
So you're deep into astrology.
Super deep. I've been practicing astrology since I was 17.
Damn.
Oh. Is astrology tied to like, I mean, because it's planets, but I feel like it gets connected to things like spiritualism. Is that is there like truth in that, or do you think that there's a distinction?
I think that there can be a distinction if you want there to be. I see astrology as a very personal practice a lot of the time, and an ancient one at that. And I think that when we're taking something that is, you know, very ancient and applying it to our modern day lives, there's going to be ways that we will have to differ from how people used to do it. Like, for example, we have all of these websites that calculate charts for us now, and I don't know how to do one by hand, but that's all people used to do. Even back, like, before like everybody had computers and there were websites for everything, like even in the 80s, like a lot of astrologers were charting hand by hand.
Yeah, they're like, let me pull out my astrolabe.
Yeah, there's like a huge like book. I have no idea how to chart by hand. I'm very spoiled. Thank you, internet and computers. So I think that there definitely can be a connection between astrology and spiritualism. For me, there definitely is. I consider myself to be a pretty spiritual person. And astrology is just like one of the practices that I apply to my life to keep that spiritualism. Because I can look at what the planets are in every day. It's almost like looking at the weather.
Does that conflict with your with you studying psychology at all?
No, not for me. I've had lots of other people be like, fuck astrology isn't real, and I'm like, okay. Like, even one of my professors, he like begins his class, like the syllabus week, he's like, astrology isn't real. I don't believe in astrology. I don't care if you're what did he say? He's like, I don't care if you're an Aries Rising or whatever. And I was like, okay, you don't care, but why are you using the terms accurately? I think if you didn't care, you wouldn't know all that.
It's like an atheist accurately referencing the Bible very well.
I'm curious. This might be, I don't want to seem dismissive or anything, but it's genuine curiosity.
For sure.
Do you believe in the, like, are you also into crystals?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So
Just pull it up. Well, okay. The reason I
some
was
in my
curious
bag.
is because sometimes I definitely want to learn more about crystals, but sometimes it's like hard.
Yeah, they're rocks.
Yeah.
Because no, it's like one thought that always popped in my head is like, I had a group of friends that would talk online, and several of them were into crystals. And I remember one time someone fell and they like strained their arm. Mm-hmm. They strained their shoulder, and they're like, "What do I do?" And before I could say anything, the group of them that were into crystals were like, "Well, the full moon's 2 days away. You just have to recharge your crystal and apply it to the affected area, and it'll get better." And I was like, "Or you could just ice it." It's just a strain.
Have you ever heard of water rocks?
yeah, that's a little too woo woo even for
That's
me.
what I'm saying. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
how deep do you go into it?
I mean, like, I think that so the thing about it is that, like, the way that people view it is that these certain crystals vibrate at a specific frequency, a specific energy, and those frequencies correspond to, different themes, different vibes and stuff like that. So there are crystals and plants, like this is applied to like everything, so crystals, plants, astrological movements that are applicable to like promoting health or prosperity or things like that. That doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna like do the thing for you. A big part of my spiritual practice is that, like, yes, I have these tools to like facilitate this kind of energy in my life, but I still have to do shit to get those things.
right.
Like, I can't just, I'm not so like delusional as to think that carrying selenite and amethyst around with me is going to like, protect me and give me lots of intuitive downloads and messages from the universe. Like, you still have to put in the work. You're still human.
Right.
I was like, you amethyst?
No way.
There is some, that's kind of where I started to open up to things like astrology, because I was like, I was never, I can't speak with 100% certainty, but I don't think I was ever like, fuck astrology, this is stupid.
That's rare for a Capricorn.
Really?
Yeah, super rare. Most Capricorns are like, I don't believe in astrology. You guys have your fun. I don't believe in it. And then we're like, yeah, a Capricorn would say that. And they're like, fuck! God damn it!
I have like 9 placements in Capricorn.
I've
You've seen
looked
my
at your chart, yeah.
Yeah, I sent it to you. It's all earth signs. I don't know what any of that means. I get my chart read every so often, and it's always like the first time somebody read just looked at
your
my chart,
psychics.
they called me an asshole.
That, yeah. If I were to just have your chart and not like have any interaction with you, I'd be like, this guy seems like he could be a little mean.
I'm nice. I'm a nice guy.
I don't think nice guys have to
Josh
say
over
that.
there. Josh over there moving his.
I don't need to see your chart.
I am a hater, which I think Capricorns are, right? No?
I would say that you're a hater because you're an Aries rising.
Oh, that is true.
That tells
okay.
me more about you than any of your Capricorn placements do.
Oh, wow.
The rising?
Yeah.
Because I looked mine up. Because do we want to look at it?
We
I
can do
don't-
that.
Whatever. I'm down for whatever.
Because I haven't had mine actually read. I've looked it up before. Like, all right, there's a lot of stuff I don't know.
There's a lot of symbols
I just
and
tried to
words.
remember the top 3.
Yeah, as you should.
Which is Aquarius, Leo, Aquarius.
You're an Aquarius rising?
Is that what it is?
Because if you're an Aquarius rising, I'm going to be very excited.
But that's what I was saying about like. So when I was just talking while you look it up. Yeah, I had a friend Shireen who I like. She was somebody that I respected deeply because she's super hardworking and very creative and like just somebody that I looked up to. And then she started talking to me about horoscopes. And then just because she was the person that talked to me about it, I was like, okay, maybe there's something to this. But she was talking about horoscopes and then she was like, you know, but she was also like, I was like, you believe in astrology? And she was like, well, you know, it's fun. And then she
That's
was
a very good response.
but then she goes, but yeah. and she goes, but also there's something about just like living. She'll like, I'll look up my horoscope and it's like, oh, be on the lookout for this. And then you start living with intention. And so there's a lot of stuff that I think comes with it that other people don't think about.
Absolutely.
That it's just a little bit of like, you know, humans need routine. Humans need like a guide to live by, and I think this provides a lot of that.
That's why astrology is so old. We've always needed that.
Right.
Just people use it less now.
Yeah, I mean it's studying the cycles of the planets and the stars, like it's closely tied to like harvests and stuff like that.
That's how like calendars started, and like
Marie
navigation
calendar?
maps.
I thought the same thing.
What?
What did you say?
I muttered Marie calendars.
Yeah. Yeah, all her grain was grounded with.
She was originally pie charts.
There it is.
I don't like that was funny.
You're a boysenberry rising.
It's because there's yeast in it.
Oh man, there's now we're getting heavy into this. I got to tell you, we've all been excited to talk about astrology.
Oh my God.
Coming into this, because I think there's a basic understanding that people have, not a basic understanding, but how would you describe it? Like a perspective of it, perception of it, and it can get very woo woo, and it can get very like. The other thing about it, I think it gets discredited a lot, obviously,
Yes.
is because women like it.
Yeah, we're good at it.
Yeah.
You guys don't know what you're freaking talking about.
But it doesn't get taken seriously because it's like a women-dominated
Thing. Yeah. No, and it's so funny because there's so many male astrologers too. But whenever I see a male astrologer, I'm like, I don't know if I trust you. Scroll to the next one, and then there will be a woman, and I'll be like, I'm listening. Yeah, I mean, my psych faculty, he started his class by saying it's a pseudoscience. He doesn't believe in it, but also he was using words correctly, which is so funny to me.
Can you give a little bit of like how do you apply it? Like what are the concrete things that you find value in?
Oh, that I personally find value in? Definitely like the moon transits. So I'll try to briefly describe this because I don't want to get too deep in it because I'm going to have to explain all of it. But like basically the moon really corresponds to your inner world and your emotions and stuff like that. So whatever the moon is in in the current time has an impact on like your day-to-day emotions, I find. So that's really important and impactful for me because I have I'll say that I have CPTSD, so like when I experience emotions, they're very, very intense. And they can, like, a bad emotion can make me spiral for days and days and days. So being able to be like, the moon is just like in Gemini or something is a good way for me to like regroup and ground myself and remind myself that like I'm kind of in control of the emotional experience that I'm having.
It's like touching grass.
Yeah, a little bit. It's just finding out what the moon is
rocks.
in. But it's a giant rock in the sky that I can't even touch.
But like it's like a way to ground yourself, center yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I also definitely use it to like figure out how I'm going to go into social situations, like what kind of almost persona I'm going to like portray in certain situations. So like this is all very like, okay, I'm here to talk about astrology. I have to look a certain way. This is what that is.
Okay.
If you just see me walking around UC Irvine, I'm like in a giant t-shirt and shorts and sandals and just like not like
something's in retrograde. That's all I know.
Saturn actually went retrograde today. That's a big transit that's happening today.
What does that mean?
So Saturn is one of the outer planets, and it is very big and very important. It like rules over discipline and time and is really the planet that you want to look to if you're looking to make things stable over time. But in a birth chart, it represents areas of restriction that you might have to grapple a little bit with. So today Saturn goes retrograde, and what that typically means, I will preface this by saying that I don't like typically do like transits or horoscopes. Like that's not really my niche. But I understand enough to be able to know what transits mean. So when Saturn goes retrograde, it's really like whatever area of life Saturn is transiting through in your birth chart, it's going to make you reevaluate that like any situations in that area of life.
Okay.
It's very, very cool, very interesting.
I probably should have just Googled this, but what does retrograde mean?
So retrograde, I'm not an astronomer, so sometimes it's hard for me to explain. But basically, the Earth moves at a speed that is often faster than other planets.
Right.
And so it's just the way that astrologers describe how it looks in the sky when we're moving faster than other planets. They kind of look like they stay in the same place, like they're no longer traveling through the sky. And so that's typically what that means, is that we're just moving faster, and so it looks like they're traveling backwards.
Okay.
It's more like a visual like trick
That's
than
so
anything.
Interesting. That I don't know why I've never Googled that. But that
I knew you guys were going to ask that, so I was like, I need to make sure I know how to describe this.
But that's such an interesting concept too, because it does like put into place of like, if that planet is like in focus, that's like you're saying, like the field, like the area of your life, like that you can like take time to focus on.
Yeah.
I don't understand. My question is very basic, or maybe even weird. I don't understand where the words come from.
The words,
Yeah,
like
how you can be like apply personality traits based on stars. Like, where's the translation?
So if we want to get into it, we can get into the history of it, because birth charts and like personality in terms of birth charts did not exist until recently, very recently, like within the past 150 years. We did not typically use astrology for that like personality aspect. It is a divinatory, it's a fortune telling like device. Like your birth chart back in ancient times, when they would like calculate it was to determine the events of your life, which we can still do with birth charts today. It's just not a lot of people do that. So the people didn't even I think that personal birth charts didn't even exist until astrology migrated to ancient Egypt. And Okay, I'm gonna bring out my notes because I was trying to remember, but I wrote notes for this.
Nice.
So what I practice and what most people here in America practice is what is called Western astrology or tropical astrology. And so the history of that is that it began in Mesoamerica, like Babylonia. It's Babylonian in origin. 1800 BCE is what I have on my notes. Which is only the second oldest. Like the first form of astrology on record was Vedic astrology in India, 2000 BCE. Yeah. And that was more of an oral tradition than written. But so like from Mesoamerica, it migrated up to like ancient Egypt and then eventually to Europe and then, across the waters to America. But it's like kind of one of those things, like astrology is one of those things where it's like everybody was kind of doing it. Like everybody was kind of doing boats, like everybody kind of had boats. Everybody kind of had astrology. Because again, it's just like looking at the stars, ascribing stories to them and trying to apply those stories to everyday life. But I will stick to talking about Western astrology since that's what I practice. So let's see, there are like several types of astrology. We have the natal astrology, which is like through the birth chart. And from that came horoscopic astrology, which is where you're like, oh, Scorpio, this is what you're in for today. But the first two forms of astrology are called horary astrology and electional astrology. So horary astrology answers questions based on the exact time that you ask the question. So you can technically use horary astrology to like find a lost item. I've seen many people do that. It's so interesting. I don't really know how to explain it in a quick way. But like, that's kind of what one of the oldest is like, are we going to have a good harvest this year? All right. What time did you ask that question? Chart. And then there's an answer in there somewhere. It's a very complex form of divination, if anything. And then electional astrology is selecting appropriate times to do something. So you would like create the chart of that future time. A lot of people do this determining their wedding days or when to sign the legal documents for their marriage or like a contract or things like that. Trying to find the appropriate time to do something like that is electional astrology. And then we have synastry, which is a relationship type reading. It shows you two birth charts like stacked on top of each other. And it determines the compatibility between those two people based on their chart. So anytime you see somebody being like, this sign and this sign go really well together, it'd be like, you don't know that. You don't know that. You don't know the rest of their charts. So like, those are like the basic, uses of astrology. But again, natal chart reading didn't come until it migrated to ancient Egypt. And then horoscopic astrology also came around that time. They developed both of those forms of astrology, and that's what's traveled through Europe and all the way out here.
So it seems like it's mostly intuitive.
Yeah, it is. It is very intuitive. That's why a lot of people, I personally also don't consider astrology a science. Right. I definitely consider it more of an art. But they're in the same way that artists often do calculations to figure out like what is the best way to do their art. I feel astrology is the same in that regard. That's why there's like so much math and astronomy involved in it.
Fibonacci sequence. I don't know.
Just saying it.
It's like I ran out of questions.
That's funny. When I was a kid, I used to read my horoscope, but I'd read it at the end of the day to see if it happened.
That's so funny.
And then if it didn't, it'd be like, ha ha ha.
Jokes astrology
I stayed home all day.
You're probably reading horoscopes wrong anyways. You should read it for your rising sign and not your sun sign.
So which one's the rising?
So the rising is also called your ascendant, and that is the point in your birth chart that is determined solely by your time of birth. That's why astrologers need that. So I can get into breaking down the birth chart for you guys if you want.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah.
So astrologers need 3 things when doing your birth chart. They need your birthday, your birth time, and your birth location. At different points in the earth, the sky looks a little bit differently. But what your birth chart is just a snapshot, a picture of the sky at the time you were born. That's what that is. The circle chart that you see, it is a map of the sky when you were born.
Right.
So you need your birth time specifically for the rising sign. The birth time determines what are called houses. So the rising sign / ascendant is also the first house of your birth chart. There's 12 in total, 12 signs, 12 houses. In traditional astrology, there's 6 or 8 planets, I think. And so the way that I like to explain it, and I got this from another astrologer who does a podcast, Maddie Murphy on Cosmic RX. The birth chart is like the play of your life, and the houses are the different settings. The signs on each house are the different vibes in those settings, the different energies, and then the planets placements are the characters. There's a lot that can be determined from your rising sign. I find it very, very fascinating. So your rising sign determines how the rest of your birth chart is set up. So, for example, Dominic, you're an Aries rising. So your chart is 1 through 12 of the zodiac, just straight, starting from Aries going all the way to Pisces. 1, 2, 3, that is what it is. Aries 1, Taurus 2. So you have a very interesting and unique birth chart in that way, where your houses are all perfectly in line of the zodiac order.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so if you're an Aries rising, your houses all correspond to the exact house that they are assigned in traditional astrology.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
He's like,
Or is there any significance to that?
I just think it's interesting. There's definitely significance when you get into the nitty-gritty of your placements and stuff like that, but I just think it's interesting to know that everything kind of lines up and is the vibes of every setting in your life is pretty on par with what it is supposed to be.
Basic.
What's my sign?
I don't know.
I'd have to Google it.
I've had mine pulled up this whole time.
He's
But I
fucking
don't know how
ready.
to read this
He's
shit.
fucking ready.
Well,
Ricky's is
up to
ready.
you guys.
Can we Google what we talked about Ricky's?
I don't
What do you
care.
guys want to do? But you were.
I want to do Josh's. He was
Yeah,
ready.
dude, he was ready for
I'm on
it.
camera though. Should we do me first?
no, it's
All right.
fine. Yeah,
You have a microphone.
I don't know.
I'm
how to
sure
read
the
that thing.
people.
Yeah, give it to me. Oh. Okay, I guess I'll look at this one.
It was just the first one.
Yeah, I know. I'm very familiar with cafe astrology. It's definitely a beginner astrology's one-stop shop.
What would you use?
I use Astros Seek because it lets me keep a database of people's birth charts. So I have a bunch of people's birth
Oh,
charts.
that's cool.
But most people use Astro.com, which is the number one big name website. I just think that Astros Seek's charts are just a little bit prettier and nicer, and then they let me keep that database without having to pay anything.
You have a list of people you know's birth times and birthdays.
Yeah, just on this website.
Are you selling that to ad agencies?
That's so funny.
They had to give me their birth information for me to do that in the first place.
true.
So
Hey, if they didn't pay,
all right, so Josh, you're a Libra rising, which I think is really funny because you often try to play devil's advocate on the podcast. I think that there's Libras. So Libras are the kind of the balancers of the zodiac. They try to keep everybody chilling and nice and friendly. They're often called people pleasers, but really what it is that they just don't want to deal with any unnecessary drama or extra just bullshit. And if they can keep people placated, that's the way to do it. Seen as the justice sign of the zodiac because it's the symbol for Libra is the scales. So they try to keep things very even. So your first house is in Libra. And then that determines like your second house is in Scorpio, your third house is in Sagittarius, and it goes all the way through that until you get to the 12th house, which for you would be in Virgo. Let's see. So, how do I want to?
I don't know what any of that meant.
I'm trying to think of like how I want to explain this. I think the number one thing to know when you know your rising sign is to figure out what planet corresponds to that sign, because that is your ruling planet. And that is where the energy of your birth chart comes from. So as a Libra rising, you're actually ruled by the planet Venus, which is
He's
very
a lover
cool.
boy.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
So that planet is where all of like your birth charts like directional energy comes from. Your Venus is in Leo, which is the same as your sun sign. So there's like what house would that be in? That is the 11th house, right? Well, the 11th house is like community, social circles, and just like an extended area of like people. Like you don't necessarily know all those people. There are houses that deal with like your neighbors, your siblings, your family, and people in close relationships with you. And the 11th house is kind of like everybody else, the circles you tend to run in. And I always think that like when Leo is in that and in any house that deals with other people, you're very proud of the connections that you have with those people, and you value them a lot and put a lot of like time and energy, and you're very generous with those people. Leo tends to be a very generous sign. And I think that means that you like share the spotlight well, and you like doing so. You like uplifting others in your community. No? You don't think so?
I do.
He's literally our producer.
Gotta keep someone down to get everybody else up.
I found mine.
Okay.
Oh, I used the site you recommended.
Oh my God, you're an angel.
I happen to memorize
That's my name.
time, place of birth.
You
It's
are
1:47 on a
Cancer
Wednesday.
rising. That's cute too. You're ruled by the moon, and we have the same moon sign in
High
Aquarius. I have everybody's cell phones.
I know.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you're ruled by the moon sign. You might feel moon transits a little bit more deeply. And it's in the 8th house. That's kind of, do you feel that when you have like moments where you're kind of feeling emotion, it might be more intense than others may experience?
I think sometimes.
Yeah. Aquarius moons are typically like able to detach really well, but you have it in the 8th house, which is the house of like the psyche and like very deep like change and transformation and things like that. And so even though it's an Aquarius moon in the 8th house, I feel that like maybe against your will, some emotions come on very strongly, and it's a little bit hard to deal with them moment to moment.
That's really funny. It's so something I wanted to dive into if we had time is the possible correlation between signs and like diagnoses. Because I was like, if it says something autistic, that's going to be really funny, and it kind of did.
Well, let me see. I have other placements I can look at. I think that Mercury would probably be the planet to look at, because that is a planet that rules thought and communication and stuff. You have yours in Libra in the 4th house. When you were like struggling with communication growing up, was it like, were your family kind of the only people who could understand you?
To a degree, yeah.
Did they try to like mediate situations for you?
I will say that part of what not prevented, but what made it easier to not get diagnosed was like I did find ways to communicate with my family. Like a story my mom tells a lot is I didn't speak until I was 4, but I recognized images, color coordination, and things like that very early on. So, like, I could like point and grunt, and she'd know what I was talking about.
That's interesting.
And I think there's a similar thing between me and my little brother because we spent so much time together. Where like when we got older, became like a communication like mediator between me and like people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, to a degree, I think it was always I never really had an issue communicating with my family as much as I did like in public.
Yeah, that's what that placement tells me, is that it was much easier to communicate with your family, especially it's in Libra. So while there may have been some frustrations with your lack of ability to communicate, I feel like everybody was a pretty good sport in wanting to communicate with you or help you at least.
Not always.
I'm sure not always.
Capricorn over here. You wrote that song, Ryan is Always Crying.
Because it was a fucking bop, dude.
Who's next? I think Ricky's next, no?
Is it okay?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's not too much.
Do you have any
I think I
questions
looked it
based
up
on
on
your chart?
Astros Seek.
Yeah.
So
You're
it's
an
like,
angel
well, I
too.
had time. Well, Ryan did it. I was like, well, while that's going
Let's
on.
see. You're an Aquarius rising. We're both Aquarius risings. And the fun thing about being an Aquarius rising is we're ruled by the toughest planet in astrology. We're ruled by Saturn. And so like we often have tough lives. This is also true for Capricorn risings who are also ruled by Saturn. We often have tough lives growing up, especially wherever Saturn is in our chart. Did you have a lot of friends growing up?
Growing up, no.
Yeah, that's what this tells me. Oh, you have Saturn in the 11th house, so like everything that I said about Josh, it kind of applies like in the opposite for you. And it's in Capricorn. Yeah. So this like seems like very reserved, maybe only socializing when necessary, like I don't know, like group projects maybe in school.
Yeah.
Being very reluctant to socialize with people for sure, and then struggling to make long-lasting connections.
Yeah.
It's so fun. Not that anybody hears this way, but it's funny when people like don't like believe in astrology, and then you read someone's chart and you tell them how they are. They're like, "Fuck."
Like, no,
Why do you know that about me?
It's all tracking.
Yeah, the first time somebody read my chart, it was at a party, and I almost started crying. Because I was like, what the fuck?
That's what I was afraid of.
She was like, you probably feel like people don't really understand. Like, it was like a weird, she said something very specific.
Yeah.
That was like.
We do that, and then we don't remember what we said.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Saturn went retrograde today, so that there's like, we feel Saturn transits a little bit more strongly, but because it is going retrograde, actually, where is it? So because it's going retrograde, we will still have a little bit of like a little bit easier time with the retrograde cycle than people who aren't ruled by Saturn, because that is when Saturn is like, all right, I'm going to let up, I'm going to ease up on you a little bit, and I'm going to torture everybody else in the population.
And I'm like, this feels right.
Yeah, so that's your ruling planet. Your moon's in Leo. You have a Virgo moon. You have an Aquarius moon. I don't remember what your moon sign is.
Taurus.
Really?
Or Pisces.
Those are so different from each other.
I think she said your.
I think
No,
I
I
said
said
it to you on
mentioned
Discord.
Taurus.
I don't
Someone mentioned
remember.
Taurus.
I think it's Taurus.
Okay, well, if it's Taurus, that's
Taurus.
2 Earth sign moons. And what did
Oh,
I
it
say
might be
yours was?
double cap.
Leo, your fire, your air. That's a good mix.
I thought of a
But
funny.
no wonder you guys bump heads. You guys have this. You guys have Earth signs in your moon signs. That's so hard headed. And I bet you have a lot of like emotion tied to this project too, specifically. So I feel like that's a little bit difficult to kind of like let loose of the reins. Don't worry though, it's in good hands.
Oh, yeah. I believe it.
I just thought of a funny astrology shirt. Like it has an astrology sign on it. And then the caption is, the important thing about astrology is location, location, location.
That's funny.
When you say ideas, you
They're
could
good.
enunciate
Yeah, I
a
know.
little bit.
Wait, what?
Nothing.
I thought you were the nice one.
No. Where did they say that at all ever?
To him saying that.
Cut to him saying that he's a nice guy.
Oh, I said that.
And me saying that nice guys don't have to say that they're nice guys.
Listen, I'm a nice person, okay? I'm kind. I'm not nice.
It cuts to every time.
That
you're
is
like,
different.
Shut the fuck up.
Flips you out. Do this because I love you.
I haven't caught up with like your new episodes of Astrophic.
No worries.
But it is such a fun podcast to listen to, especially, I mean, for me, even if you're not into astrology, which is like, I'm sure the people that are interested in it, like, it's fun and it's like, it's interesting to be able to analyze characters and people in that way. When I started listening to it, just because I don't have that strong connection to astrology, I was thinking about it. It reminds me of Enneagrams, because when I learned about Enneagrams, it was specifically for a writing class.
Yeah.
And it was about like the teacher placed actors into Enneagrams and then said like, this is why when you feel that somebody's miscast because they're playing a character that feels unlike them. And then they explain how like you could be you could be low in your number, you could be high in your number and all that stuff. So my introduction to that was very like, it was for character analyzation and like figuring out how to write like archetypes for characters. And so like hearing your breakdowns of characters is very fun for me, and like how you apply it to the charts is really cool, because from a creative perspective, it's like, this is a really solid way to like solidify a character, to like really understand like as a writer or as a creator of like what like creating somebody with intention. And so that's what I got from it. And I'm always like, especially when I will listen to episodes of like characters that I know, like one of my favorites was what's the character from BoJack Horseman?
Todd Chavez.
Yeah, that's a great episode. If you're into BoJack Horseman, it's a good starter episode. I think
I had a fun time making that episode.
Yeah,
Todd's a fun character.
Yeah, it was great, and I think it was on point. It's a lot of fun to listen to. Everybody, check it out.
The ones I thought were interesting were the ones that were characters from The Last Avatar.
Mm-hmm. I did Zuko.
Because they incorporate a version of like astrology into the show. Like they use elemental signs, but also there's two episodes that come to mind specifically. They visit a library and they actually are able to track the mapping of the stars. Yeah. And that's when they find out that certain solar events or like space events actually have an effect on each of the individual tribes of benders.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool.
I think that part of Avatar is also really cool. There is a form of astrology that originates in China, but I tried to like research it a little bit in preparation for this. And what I got is that I don't fucking know anything about that. Chinese astrology is so different from Western and Vedic astrology. It's almost incomparable.
Wow.
I don't understand any of this stuff. It's just a bunch of shapes.
Everything's a bunch of shapes.
Yeah.
So
yes.
Okay, Terrence Howard. I'm kidding.
What's with the masculine, feminine stuff? Like, what does that apply to?
So there are certain signs and planets and stuff that are attributed towards masculine and feminine energies. Like Venus would be a feminine planet, Mars would be masculine. They are literally. That's why we have the like male sign is the same as Mars and the female sign is the same as Venus. Like that's why that's the same. People are moving away from that a little bit in astrology communities, at least that I'm a part of, because there's so much like energies don't fit into like these perfect little neat boxes. And the masculine, feminine kind of like, descriptors of certain planetary or zodiac energies, it feels outdated, just because we're moving away from like a gender binary in society as a whole. But it was just basically another, like how, you know, certain signs are water signs and things like that. Like it's kind of just the same thing of just ascribing different energies to different planets and stuff. But I don't personally take into account masculine and feminine energies when I do astrology.
I was just wondering because the stuff is all broken down into percentages, and so I was like, "Is it?"
Yeah,
applied to
there's like other things that you can calculate from your birth chart. Like I was talking about ruling planets, but there's a second thing called a dominant planet. And the way that that's calculated is that they count up like all of the different modalities and the different elements in your chart, and then like add it all together, multiply it by something, and then you get whatever your dominant planet is. Not everybody has one. It's dependent person to person, but like a dominant planet is kind of secondary to your ruling planet. It's like, you know, your ruling planet is like the captain of the ship, and the dominant planet is like the first mate.
It seems like a lot of stuff.
It is. Hey, remember when I said I was studying this since I was 17 years old?
Where do you fall on the 13th sign?
Get the fuck out of here with that shit. Why do you think you know better than ancient astrologers?
I don't know anything. I'm just...
We still, like a lot of people still only use the traditional planets, which is everything up to Saturn. And people don't count Uranus, Neptune, Pluto in astrology. And that's called traditional astrology.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's dependent person by person, practice by practice. I've never met a reputable astrologer who uses the 13th sign.
Okay. What about cusps?
Cusps are a little bit more complicated. I'm kind of like on the line between I don't really know quite yet whether I fully believe in cusps or not. Because like on one hand I'm like, well, like energy is kind of malleable. It doesn't just like immediately there's a cutoff day. But on the other hand, it's like, but like we have to have like some, you know, barrier to separate these things. And how cusps are also confusing because like some astrology websites and apps take into account cusps, or they like calculate things like slightly differently based on that. So it's like a little bit hard. If you tell me that like you're a Cancer, but like one day later you would have been a Leo, you're a Cancer. Like for all intents and purposes, you're a Cancer. You can't like claim Leo energy, but you might have strong Leo energy elsewhere in your chart, which is why you feel that you relate to that sign as well.
Okay.
Have you heard the song Age of Aquarius?
Of course.
How accurate is that song?
So there has been a lot of talk about that, especially recently. So there's like...
What are you guys talking about?
You've never heard that song?
You don't watch 40-Year-Old Virgin?
Aquarius.
The end of the movie?
Oh, is that what that is?
That's a song, yeah. But it's like a real astrological thing. Typically, people kind of correspond the ages to whatever sign Pluto is in, since it takes the longest to transit between signs. So people were saying like, yeah, the age of Aquarius is when Pluto goes into Aquarius, and that's like, we're going to have so much innovation and like technological advances and like community togetherness and stuff, like things that Aquarius represents. And it depends on the astrologer you ask. Some say that it started in the 60s. Some say that it didn't start until recently. Some say it still hasn't started yet. Nobody knows when those things begin and end. It's really a vibe. You got to cop out.
What can people look forward to as you as Astrophic returns, and like where can people find it?
So I'm currently on a monthly release schedule because I am drowning in academia. But for the rest of the summer, it's Stranger Things characters.
Okay.
And then we come back in September with Hunger Games characters in preparation for the new book coming out in March. With some of the rest of the Avatar: The Last Airbender like main cast sprinkled in there. I want to try to increase my upload schedule, but we'll see. That's kind of all I have planned for Astrophic right now, and you can find it wherever you get podcasts. It recently just got added to YouTube and YouTube Music.
Hell yeah. Sick. Thanks so much for being here. This was such a fun episode to do. We got into so much that I'm like, that we didn't even plan for. And it's always very enlightening. So
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
where can people find you if they want?
I'm Celestial.binch on all platforms, mostly just TikTok and Twitter, but Twitter add an extra H at the end. And that's pretty much the only place you can find me. YouTube, also Celestial.binch. But yeah, that's it. I don't have much of a social media presence.
Cool.
And just for clarity, that's binch, right? B-I-N.
BINCH, yes.
Don't want people looking up the wrong thing.
Ryan, is there any question for the audience?
What's your rising sign?
Fun.
Get at us in the comments.
Can you say that with a little bit more enthusiasm?
No. Oh, if you've made it this far, let us know what your birthing chart is.
And from us,
And from us,
at un
at un
poquito.
poquito. Don't fly.